and welcome to the Audio Wrestling Vault, a collection of radio interviews featuring many of the leading stars in the wrestling business from A to Z. Arn Anderson to Larry Zbyszko. The vault is now open, so please join us. This edition has been in the vault for some time, since it aired in 1995 and is titled The Glory Days of the World Wrestling Federation. It features the GOAT of the WWF, the living legend himself, Bruno Sammartino, as he surprises us by praising Larry Zbyszko and discussing how he body slammed Haystacks Calhoun in Madison Square Garden. The self-proclaimed living legend, Larry Zbyszko, discusses his feud with Bruno and why the wrestlers of yesterday were tougher than the workers of the 90s. And Tito Santana tells us why he left the WWF for greener pastures even at the height of his career. So sit back and enjoy the action as it unfolds on the Audio Wrestling Vault.
This is Chief Wahoo McDaniels, and I'm listening to the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap on Waxy 790.
Hey, thank you, Wahoo. How are you doing, wrestling fans? This is Steve Sloan. We're back at the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap. Craig?
Okay, wrestling fans, you can say what you want. You look up the term living legend in any publication, and this is the man's picture you'll see. Today they say Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, Ric Flair, Lex Luger. They call these guys legends. They call these guys superstars. But I can tell you, in my book, there is only one living legend, and that's Bruno Sammartino. Bruno, you on the line with us?
Yes, Craig. Thank you very much kindly for those kind remarks.
Well, Bruno, I got to tell you, the Wrestling Observer has called you the most popular wrestler of all time. You held the WWF title on 2 different occasions for nearly 13 years, and I got to say, it's really a true honor for me to have you on the line. And Bruno, why don't you tell us a little bit about the early days when you were first getting into the wrestling business?
Well, Craig, let's see, where do I start? I had an interest in wrestling from way back from my days in Europe. You know, as you know, I was born and raised in Italy, and when I came over to this country, to my disappointment, as I started, I went to language school and whatever because I couldn't speak a word of English, but when I started school, they had no wrestling program at the school that I went to. So I was very fortunate that one of my teachers was friends with the wrestling coach at the University of Pittsburgh, and he arranged for me while in high school to be able to go there and work out with the wrestling team. And this was very beneficial for me at that age to be training regularly with the Pitt wrestlers who at the time had a tremendous team. They had some national AU champions. They had a couple that had gone to the Olympic Games. So this was great for me. But at the same time, in order for me to develop some size and strength, I also took up weightlifting. And by weightlifting, I don't mean bodybuilding to see how beautiful I could make my body. I mean weightlifting. I was competing in both Olympic-style lifting and powerlifting. And my interest grew equally on both sports, so that I was working out regularly on the mat, but at the same time, I was training very, very hard with the weights to where I did compete in different meets, both Olympic-style lifting and powerlifting. And in fact, if I may say so myself, I think I did pretty well. In fact, in 1959, when I competed in Oklahoma City for the North American Weightlifting Championships, I took first place. And when I came back to Pittsburgh, they had me on a television show as a result of winning that. And while on that show, they asked me not only about my weightlifting, but they asked me if I was still training in wrestling, because they knew my wrestling, the interest that I had in it. And just at that time, a gentleman by the name of Rudy Miller happened to be listening to the show, and he was the guy who was one of the promoters with Capital Wrestling. Capital Wrestling was before they changed to the WWF. And he was their representative here in Pittsburgh, where they used to do a live television wrestling show every week. And so that's why he happened to be here on that day, that Saturday, when I was doing this live television show. And so he inquired about me, and some people that knew me told me that he would like to see me. And so I came to the studio the following week, and he spoke to me. He wanted to know all about my wrestling background and all that stuff. And he told me he saw me on TV, after that meet. And he asked me if I'd come to Washington, D.C., where I had the opportunity to meet Vince McMahon Sr. and Toots Mondt. Toots Mondt and Vince were partners in Capital Wrestling. And that's how it all started. I came over there. They tried me out. They had a couple of pros work out with me. They just wanted to see just how much wrestling, what kind of wrestling knowledge I had and all that. And I think they kind of liked what they saw, and then I trained for the next 3-4 months. And then I started my wrestling career.
Bruno, I know back in the 50s you were regarded as perhaps one of the strongest men in the world. Let's jump up a little bit to May 1963, Madison Square Garden. You want to pick it up from there?
Well, yeah. At the time I was wrestling in Canada. I was wrestling strictly in Canada. In fact, I had been there for a little over a year. And I had gotten an offer from Vince McMahon Sr. to come and wrestle in New York, and I wasn't too interested at the time really, because I was doing pretty good in Canada. I was quite happy over there, and I told him that the only way I would be interested if I had an opportunity to not just to be a wrestler, but to be given the same opportunity I'd been given in Canada, and that was to have an opportunity at the top, and that was to assure me that I would get a chance to wrestle Buddy Rogers, who was the world champion at the time. And he couldn't promise me that it would happen right away, but he said in time, he said there would be no problem. So I went back. I think I went in February of 1963, and in May 17th, I believe it was, of 63 is when I wrestled Rogers. And what can I tell you? That was the beginning of me as my reign as world champion.
Hey, Bruno, this is Mark. I just want to reiterate what a great honor it is to have you on the Wrestling Wrap this week.
Thank you, Mark. You're very kind. I appreciate that.
Anytime. What do you miss most about that time, your reign as the champion?
Well, I'll tell you the truth, and I say this sincerely. What I miss the most the fans, because for whatever reason that they took to me as they did, I don't know, I still don't understand it, but they treated me so fantastically that I just can't tell you. In any arena that I went to, for one thing, I was very, very fortunate because they seemed to come out in groves, and we used to pack those arenas almost nightly, and just the reception that they gave me, and I was always touched by that, and I truly appreciated that, and that only gave me extra energy to give as much as I possibly could give, so that no one would ever leave that arena disappointed, because that's the thing that I absolutely didn't want to do, was let the fans down, because again, their support was absolutely unbelievable, and just the way they treated me, I didn't understand why they was that kind, but they just made it extremely, extremely special for me throughout my career. And I think if you were to ask me what do I miss about wrestling, I think that would be the thing that I miss the most.
I can imagine. Does one night stand out as the most satisfying night of your entire career?
Well, I've had quite a few. I was very fortunate, but there's no question that the night that I took the belt from Rogers was very memorable, because first of all, I kind of had a feeling that things were going to go okay, because I never saw an audience. I had been wrestling in Canada, and I was very lucky there as far as the way that people treated me and all. But when I beat Rogers for the title, I thought the roof of Madison Square Garden was just going to pop off. And when I saw that kind of reaction, that kind of approval from the fans, I just felt that if I did my part and stay in shape and do well when I went in the ring, that I was going to be okay from that day on. And I think that was probably, I had others too. For example, the fact that when I prior to the Rogers match, I found that nobody had ever been able to lift H-Tax Calhoun.
Right.
He weighed over 600 pounds. And because to me, when you hear that nobody ever did this, naturally you'd like to take a crack at it, And so when I picked up Calhoun, which was also in Madison Square Garden, the first time I ever lifted him up in the air, that too was very gratifying, because again, I couldn't believe the response from the fans, and how much that helped as far as establishing my name in that. So that was another great thing for me. And then there have been many, very gratifying moments that I've had throughout my career. But these are two of the bigger ones.
Bruno, hi, this is Steve Sloan, and again, I also want to echo everybody's comments here. Growing up in the Northeast, in the New York area, I had a chance to see you at the Garden many, many times. I wanted to get your quick capsule comments, either professionally or personally, on some of the people you were with in those times. Larry Zbyszko.
Well, Steve, I have to tell you, Larry Zbyszko, despite what people think, people always, when they talk to me about Larry, they say, he was a, but Larry was a very talented guy. I knew him here in Pittsburgh when I first met him because he wrestled for a high school called North Allegheny, which had the best wrestling team and wrestling program in the country, and he went undefeated as a heavyweight, and then he got a scholarship where he went on, I believe, to Lehigh, and then I forget where he finished up at, and continued to wrestle. So he was a terrific amateur wrestler, and then he came in the pros, and in my opinion, too many times he was underestimated for just how good he was. I think Larry is a very, very talented wrestler.
You and he had quite a battle at Shea Stadium. I was one of the 45,000 plus people.
Oh, were you there that night?
Absolutely.
Okay, Steve. Well, you saw what kind of a crowd we had. And you know, if you remember, Steve, I don't know if you do, but what was amazing about that night was that we had around 45,000 people, and that same night in Yankee Stadium, they had the Yankees against Baltimore, who were tuck there as far as, their division, and they had around, I forget if they had 35,000, 40,000 people. And the Steelers were playing an exhibition game against the Giants the same night, the Giants Stadium, and they had something like 45,000 people. So that was quite a thrill for us to have that kind of competition and to still draw around 45,000 people.
Bruno, there's something that's been in my mind a long time. I watched wrestling as it was then. I watch wrestling as it was now. You had something that's undefinable, a charisma. You weren't the biggest guy. You weren't a flamboyant wrestler, not a high flyer, really stayed more on the ground. I mean, how do you explain your popularity and your charisma?
You know, Steve, I've been asked that question a number of times, and I don't know that I know the answer. I think maybe, if you will, maybe the simplicity of it, because I was a guy, you just went in the ring with a pair of boots and a pair of tights, as you said, no fancy ropes, no long hair or bleached hair or anything like that. I think that people, again, I'm guessing as much in because I'm not sure that I have the answer, but I think people saw me as just a plain guy from the old country who went out there every day. I think they believed that I kept myself in great shape all the time. And you know, when you say I wasn't one of the biggest guys, keep in mind that in those years, I wasn't as far as being 6'5" and 6 like some of these guys. I'm only 6 foot tall. But I did weigh around 270 pounds, and that's pretty big for a guy 6 feet tall, especially when if that's like I'm bragging a little bit here, especially if you look the way I did, because I think if you remember me way back then, if you're old enough to remember me in the in the early 60s and through the middle 70s, that's a pretty big size, and especially to be in the shape that I was in, because I could go an hour. In fact, Kowalski paid one of the biggest compliments to me in an interview that he was in. He said that I was the only guy who ever made him tired at the end of a match, because Kowalski was known to be in such great shape all the time.
Bruno, we've got some people on the line here that are dying to talk to you that have been holding on for quite a while. No, please. And let's go to Kevin, who's on a cellular phone. Kevin, are you with us?
Hey, Bruno Sammartino, one of the all-time living legends.
Well, thank you, Kevin.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good. Real good. And hello to you, Mr. Craig.
Hello, thanks.
Got a couple of questions. First of all, I wanted to just comment on a couple of things. I am a very avid wrestling fan. I've always been an avid wrestling fan, and I attend a lot of the shows as much as I can.
Okay.
Now, I go to some of the shows, and one of the shows I do see a lot that runs down in the Miami area. They usually run about once a month. Mm-hmm. It's put on by the Sunshine Wrestling Federation. Am I correct on that?
I don't know, because I'm not familiar with that.
No, I'm talking to Mr. Craig.
I'm not familiar with the organization.
But do you have a question for Bruno?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to just ask you, are you still involved with the WWF, first of all?
No, I've been away from them for 8 years.
Have you?
Yeah.
What is your opinion on the situation that has happened where all of the talent that Mr. McMahon used to have has now rolled over to Mr. Turner?
Well, again, first of all, okay, let me answer you this way. First of all, when I retired in 1981, I came back in 1984 as a color commentator. I was very disillusioned because of the drastic changes that had taken place from Vince McMahon Sr. to Vince McMahon Jr. And when I saw the drastic changes that took place, I won't go into detail for everything, But I was very disillusioned and very unhappy, and I tried to get out, but I was threatened with a suit because I had a contract, so I had to stay the rest of the contract. So why I'm telling you all that is that then I lost complete interest in the business. I got out and completely divorced myself with it. Now, as far as why that's happening, it's very simple, the answer to that. First of all, there's only 2 organizations left, unlike many years ago where you had many different, what we call territories, different promotions that a wrestler could go from one to the other. Now there's basically just the WWF and the WCW. And the reason why a lot of the wrestlers prefer to go to WCW is because Ted Turner, being Mr. Moneybags, he offers these guys very lucrative contracts, guaranteeing them X amount of dollars per year in these contracts, which some of the ones that I hear about are mind-boggling because they're really are great contracts. Whereas McMahon, he does not guarantee, from my understanding, from all people that I've talked to and know, he does not guarantee anybody anything as far as money. He only guarantees them that he's going to give them what is known as the big push, or to guarantee them that he's going to make main eventers out of them. But he does not guarantee them X amount of dollars per year like Ted Turner does. And so, guys, if they have their choice, they'd much rather be wrestling for Turner than they would for McMahon. But Turner can only use so many, and he's only interested in those that the organization's interested in.
Bruno, we're going to take a short break right now. Can you hang with us, and we'll be right back?
Sure.
Okay. Once again, you're listening to the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap on Waxy 790.
Away, he hooked my leg, and now there it is. You'll see both of his feet up on the rope against his steel toe. For the referee didn't see it. 1, 2, 3, and that's how I lost. This is a way to lose the title, and this is a way for this man to go around the world, boasting to the world that he is the world champion. The man who defeated Bruno Sammartino. I wore that belt for 13 years, and I met all challenges, defeated them all. And to have a thief to walk around the arenas today, around the world, wearing my belt and saying that he is the champion, the man who overpowered, who did this to Sammy. Yeah, it's got me. I'm bitter, all right. He's talking about guts. I'm sick to my stomach, but I'm going to tell you something, Graham. That victory you shall pay. You will regret the day that you ever won that belt. You will regret the day that you ever got that belt, because you are going to pay in such a fashion. You're going to so regret having done that. And when I meet you in Philadelphia, and now that the people...
Bring back memories, Bruno?
Jeez. I'm listening to that. I couldn't believe it. So long ago. Wow.
Yeah, we had to really dig that out of the archives, Bruno.
I'll be darned. Wow.
I know Steve had started to mention some names to you.
Uh-huh.
What comes to mind? Spiros Arion, Cowboy Bill Watts, Victor Rivera, Larry Zbyszko. What did all these guys have against you? They all started out as your friends. And what is this, the instant way to the top?
Well, of course, whenever, the main goal for every individual is to be number one. And let's face it, when you've been up there like I was for almost 13 years, that's a long time. And that it keeps a lot of other people from getting into that particular point. And so everybody wants to get there. And so you can't blame them, really, because everybody wants to be on top. No matter what business you get into, I would imagine that the goal is to be the best you can possibly be. And these people that you mentioned, they were all extremely talented guys, and they all wanted to have, they all dreamed naturally, as I did before I became champion, that to be title holders. So, they were all, like I say, they were all very, very good, each and every one of those people that you mentioned. And so, like everybody else, business is business. They wanted to be number one, and that was in their way.
Craig mentioned a bunch of the great names that you feuded with over the years, but what about my favorite Bruno Sammartino feud, superstar Billy Graham?
Well, with Billy, okay, I don't know how old you guys are, so I don't know how far back you go.
Old enough to remember, Bruno.
Okay, but I could tell you matches, I had my own favorite matches, okay, of years ago. Billy Graham, there's no question about it. With Billy, Billy was very charismatic too. He knew how to get that crowd excited, and Billy looked phenomenal. I don't have to tell you that. You know how great he looked physically and that. And so, as far as the fans went, they seemed to really enjoy the matches when I used to wrestle him, and they were good, but I can't honestly tell you that, as far as from my own perspective, that they were some of the best matches I've ever had.
Really? Which ones rate as some of your personal favorites?
Well, for example, I don't know if you go back enough to remember Hans Mortier. I like that because we did a lot of great wrestling in this match. See, there were some guys who would go in the ring and wrestled, and then there were some guys who would brawl, and there were some guys who did a combination. What I did was I went according to my opponent. If I had a guy like Hans Mortier who was a wrestler, then we wrestled, and I kind of liked that. If I went a guy against like Kowalski who was a brawler, then I became a brawler. If I became a guy like Superstar Billy Graham who did some test of strength and then some brawling and some hold, we did that too. One of my favorite matches, if not the favorite match I ever had, was certainly one of them was against Pedro Morales when we went an hour 17 minutes of pure, clean, scientific wrestling. There wasn't one illegal blow, maneuver, or anything in that. And I liked that, and it gave me a great opportunity to show the fans that those kind of matches, unlike what the promoters believe that matches like that people would not like or enjoy or whatever, and I think we proved them wrong because the people really were into that match.
That was a rarity for its time, even in the early 70s when the contests were a lot more athletic.
Yeah.
Bruno, at 6:28, we'd like to take another call here. So let's go to Keith from Hollywood. Keith, you're on the Wrestling Wrap.
Yeah, how you doing, Bruno?
I'm fine. How are you?
Very good. I just want to say, I saw you many years ago when you used to wrestle at Sunnyside Gardens in New York.
Oh, my God. You are going back a ways.
And I want to say that, to me, as of right now, I still think you're the greatest in the world.
Thank you.
And I saw your son about a couple of years ago when he was out here in Fort Lauderdale, and he was good. And I just want to say, I saw some of your matches up there, especially Superstar Billy Graham. And I think you're still the best.
Do you have a question for Bruno, sir?
Very kind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Bruno, we really want to thank you. This is only our second week here on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap, and I can say that no star shall ever shine brighter than the living legend Bruno Sammartino.
Well, aren't you kind?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got to say, I mean, I originally started as a wrestling fan, got into some promotion, and actually the biggest thrill of my life was getting to meet you down here in Fort Lauderdale in 1990 when you participated on a television production that we were doing. Also, I want the fans to know that Bruno has an autobiography which was released in 1990, that if you go into the bookstores and you make a request, I'm sure that the book will be available. Guys, you got anything else to say to Bruno?
Just want to thank you for your time, Bruno. And thanks for all the years of pleasure you've given us wrestling fans.
Thank you. My pleasure. Enjoyed talking to you guys.
Okay, Bruno, do you want to take us into commercial?
Yes. May I say that this is Bruno Sammartino, and you are listening to the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Rep on Waxy 790. Yes. May I say that this is Bruno Sammartino, and you are listening to the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Rep on Waxy 790.
We are back here on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap. Steve Sloan, Craig Kay, and Howard Brody. And that intro from Bruno is very apropos of our next guest, right, Howard?
You got that right, Steve. Today's guest is the self-proclaimed living legend of pro wrestling. He's a former AWA World Champion. He's held many titles, like the WWF Tag Team Championship, the NWA Western Heritage title, and prior to his retirement from the ring, he held the WCW World Television Championship. He is currently a co-host of the WCW Pro Show on TBS Saturday mornings at 9:05, along with Chris Cruz, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. From World Championship Wrestling, let us welcome our guest today, the one and only Larry Zbyszko. Larry?
That was very clever, you guys, with the Bruno bit.
Well, Bruno is actually the first guest on the show. Larry, just want to say thanks for being with us on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap.
Well, yeah, go ahead. You got a little bit of my time here. You know, it's not easy being a legend and hanging out in Larry land.
we hear you there, Larry.
Larry, you made a comment, though. Let me comment on your comment. But retired, number one, I'm not retired. I just in the predicament where no one with the big names got the guts to get in the ring with me.
Oh.
And self-proclaimed living legend. I didn't make that up. That was the media.
Oh, okay.
When I retired Bruno, you know, I was very young at the time.
Well,
labeled me the new living legend, and it kind of fits.
Well, we stand corrected. Larry, it's the beginning of 1996. WCW is as hot as can be. You guys are on fire right now. You've got the WWF on the ropes. Ric Flair is the WCW champion for the 12th time. Monday Nitro is heading into town a week from tomorrow night on the 15th. Everybody in town's talking about WCW Nitro. Go ahead and fill us in on what we can expect.
Well, it's a hot show, Nitro. I mean, even as much as I've been involved in wrestling, I get excited watching it. I think one of the things that I like about it, it reminds me of when I first started. Wasn't too many of them, but there was a few stations where it was live. And when it's live, that means anything goes. They can't sweep it, they can't cut it. These guys, get ticked off and they take off. There's nothing you can do about it except broadcast it. So I like the Nitro show. It's a live thing, and if you can't be there in person, the next best thing is live, like a pay-per-view. But I think you people in Miami are going to get a treat because what the people told me at the office was it's going to be a big grudge match night.
That's correct.
Yeah, and they got the Flair versus Sting, and the Sting, doesn't hate Flair's guts by now. I mean, my God, the guy told him the Brooklyn Bridge 3 or 4 times. I mean, like Sting is like, feeling like a stupid idiot if I was him. But it's an interesting match there because Sting's been wrestling Flair like over the years now, and if he doesn't know how to beat him yet, he's never going to do it. But you never know. He might have a new world champion that night in Miami.
Yeah, Larry, this is Craig. Just want to also thank you. I remember when I lived up north watching you with the World Wrestling Federation, now, of course, with WCW. Just let me give everybody some information. The show will be at the James L. Knight Center. That'll be on Monday, January 15th at 7:30 p.m. They go live worldwide at 9 o'clock. Tickets are available right now at Ticketmaster. In addition to what you talked about with Ric Flair and Sting, also Lex Luger and Randy Savage, Johnny B. Bad taking on the Giant. Also going to see one of the favorites down here in South Florida, which is the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan and Hugh Morris taking on 2 of the Horsemen, which are Brian Pillman and Arn Anderson, and I think Hulk Hogan's going to be down here with an appearance also.
Yeah, the Hulk is probably going to be there. I don't know about Macho Man here. This Macho Man's going to have a tough time with Luger. I mean, I don't know that much about Savage. I didn't hang around the WWF and that, but the more I watch the guy, I mean, he's a feisty guy, Macho Man, but he's got an injury. He's got some kind of a triceps muscle, and they're talking about cutting it. Well, so he's been wrapping it and putting it off because I imagine if he's like me, I always put off things for the last minute because I hate doctors.
Well, Hulk Hogan got on the, I think it was on one of the pay-per-views, and said that, hey, there is nothing wrong with Randy Savage, that his arm is okay, and the word on the street was that, Savage was going in for an operation and that he was hurt and he wasn't able to perform. I mean, people down here in Florida know Lex Luger as well as anybody. I mean, he started in Florida. He was trained down here by Hiro Matsuda. And, I see Luger having an easy time with Savage.
Well, I think he may because, Hogan might have been shooting his mouth off about his not being injured to psych out his opponents. But I'm pretty sure that, it's enough to wrestle, but it's not 100%. Sooner or later, this guy's going to have to get a cut.
Larry, hey, this is Steve Sloan. Again, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. We want to remind wrestling fans they can give us a call and talk with the self-proclaimed living legend.
Yeah, you can blame Bill Apter for that label.
We had Bill on not too long ago. Larry, we talk a lot about proteges. You obviously being Bruno's protege. The guy that I'm most impressed with right now in WCW is the Giant, in the fact that he's so big, but has really improved his wrestling technique. Can you talk about what you think is going to be his future with the organization, and what do you see for him?
Well, I think the guy is going to have a heck of a future. Again, that's if you don't get hurt. But he's a giant guy, but he's a mobile guy. Someone said this guy can stand in the middle of the ring and do a backflip. I mean, he's an agile guy, and within this organization, I think the guy's an attraction. Plus, when they do their European tours, people flock to see a Giant.
Exactly.
And, when he goes to Japan, so I think this company's got a heck of an asset there. I mean, he's a heck of an athlete for a guy his size. He's huge.
Now, what about Ric Flair winning the title for the 12th time? I mean, that certainly threw many of us for a loop. No one expected that. What do you see in the future for Ric Flair and his title holding?
Well, Ric Flair, he's a master chess player at this, and a guy that's been around that long. I mean, he's a sneaky guy, so it's going to be tough. The guys that get in the ring with Flair are going to have to
just beat him right in the middle, and they're going to have to do it quick because he's going to have Arn Anderson hanging around. He's going to have Benoit hanging around, and Pillman. I don't know what the story is with Pillman. If I was Flair and Anderson, I think I'd punch Pillman in the mouth.
Larry,
but Flair's a sneaky guy. I think the only thing with Flair again is, over the years the guy's been taking a beating, and Vader beat him up and he survived, and he wrestled Hogan and he survived, and but sooner or later physically it's going to take its toll. So I don't know how long Flair's going to hold on to it this time.
Larry, we have a gentleman that calls our show every week, and he is probably the #1 Larry Zbyszko fan in the entire world. Kenny, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. How you doing, Mr. Zbyszko?
Good.
I call you Mister because I respect you. First of all,
most people just call me sir.
I'm one of the very few fans that still have stuck behind you all the years, regardless of your feud with Bruno over the years, because I still understand why you did what you did at the time.
It was a weird time back then.
Right. Also, I have a couple questions I wanted to ask you. Where does somebody like myself get a hold of some of your old matches from years back, like in, let's say, WWF, Georgia Championship Wrestling, and all that?
Yeah, I really don't know. I've been to a couple of these,
those convention type things.
Yeah, convention type things. I don't do many. I've only done a couple, but I was surprised myself. There were people showing videos of me wrestling Tony Gurria back in the garden.
I remember that.
And stuff like that, and they're out there. I mean, there's a bunch of me out there somewhere, but to tell you the truth, I wouldn't know where to get them.
What about a fan club? Do you have a fan club?
Oh, I had one years ago, but
Paulie Dangerously was a member, right?
He could have been the president then.
I remember him talking about it once.
But I just never sent the people that much to get into that. People kind of irritate me.
Yeah, I got a lot of your old matches on tape, but not enough. I can't get enough of your matches, I love watching you wrestle.
Well, if Hogan and Flair and Sting and some of these guys with these so-called big reputations get the cut, maybe you'll get to see me again.
I'd like to see you go against Flair. Now, that would be a great match. I think you could take him.
The promoters talked about that a year and a half ago or so, and Flair chickened out. He's been running for me for 20 years.
Wow.
Kenny, we're going to have to move on.
Okay. Nice talking with you.
Kenny, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do we take care of you or what?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm glad you got Larry on the air.
Larry, every week Kenny calls and says, when are you going to have Larry Zbyszko on the air?
The guy's got good taste.
Well, speaking of good taste here, Larry.
Declare him an un-Spudhead.
That was my next question. How did that come about? How did that nickname come about?
Spudhead?
Yeah.
Boy, it just popped in my head. I went up to Minnesota, and it was the first time I wrestled in that area. Horrible area, too. It's like a frozen tundra up there. But it was a great wrestling organization at the time, and it was a fun territory to wrestle in, and there were some big names there. But the people, probably because of the weather, maybe, all they did was sit home, and they were kind of backwards, and like if it was going to frost, they'd all leave work and run home to pick their potatoes. And it just struck me weird. Like who gives a damn about a potato? Go to Fast Market and buy a potato.
Because Mrs. Potato cares.
But anyway, so the name Spudhead just kind of arranged from that. It just kind of fit them up there.
All right, Larry, what we want to do is ask you to hang on for a minute while we take our short time out, and we'll be right back after these important messages.
This is Chief Wahoo McDaniels, and I'm listening to the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap on Waxy 790.
Okay, we're back here on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap. Steve Sloan, Craig Kay, and Howard Brody. And with us on the line is the living legend, if you want to believe what he has to say, Larry Zbyszko. Larry?
Don't sound like you agree with that.
Oh, I believe wholeheartedly in that, Larry. I know you grew up in Pittsburgh, down the street from Bruno Sammartino. That's how I suppose you got your start in wrestling. Do you remember who your first match was against?
My first match, I can picture the guy, and I can't remember his name.
That'll be a good trivia question.
That was a long time ago. If I think about it, it may pop in, but
it wasn't the guy from Montreal, Fernand Frechette, was it?
Well, it was a guy. It was one of the Canadian boys that came down to Pittsburgh. My second match was with Frank Mahoney Dorso. I remember that one.
Well, now there's a name out of the past. Larry, got a question to ask you here. At the time I forget off the top of my head what year it was, but at the time you wrestled in front of what was then the largest crowd in North America at Shea Stadium against Bruno Sammartino. You remember?
Well, that was 1980. That was at that time. That was right before the birth of a nationwide cable, and that was
It was 47,000 plus. What was it like?
That was the largest. Yeah, that was the largest ever anywhere in the world.
What was it like wrestling in front of that many people against the guy who taught you how to wrestle?
Well, it was exhilarating at the time. It was, I was so focused, on Bruno that whether it was Madison Square Garden, which was 22,000 some, or say Stadium, it really didn't matter. Plus the fact that as many people as there were there, they were out in the bleachers. And as much noise as they made, it didn't sound near as loud as if 22,000 were inside Madison Square Garden. So the crowd probably affected me less at Shea Stadium than inside an arena where, like, when I walked out, the roof flew off the place.
Larry, in 1974, you were named the Rookie of the Year. I personally saw you face Bob Backlund and superstar Billy Graham for the World Wrestling Federation title at various times. Of course, you held the tag team belts with Tony Gurria. You've been with WCW really since the old NWA days. You've seen a lot of the greats come and go. How do you compare the wrestling stars when you started in 1974 with the stars of today?
Well, it was a different style. The guys in my days were actually before my days when I started. I'm sort of like a generation in the middle of it. But the guys when I started were a lot more no-nonsense, vicious, brutal, they don't give a damn type of guy. I mean, if you knocked their front teeth out, they were proud of it. They couldn't wait to do an interview with their teeth gone. Where if someone today got their teeth knocked out, they're in the dentist's chair the next day getting teeth put into it, look pretty as ever. And back then it was more who was the toughest son of a gun around. Where now it's like who's got the best looking body in town. And it's a different psyche, but I've noticed not only is it with the wrestling, if you ask football coaches, they'll tell you guys like Ray Nitschke and some of these guys in the past, Dick Butkus, were brutal guys. Where today, if they get an injury, they start crying about they need another $5 million. It's basically, in my opinion, and other athletes my age, that boy, the generation now is just like a bunch of robotized whipped sheep. Wait for their girlfriends to tell them how high to jump.
Larry, up in Atlanta, they have the WCW training camp, which is supposedly where the stars of the future, the big names of the WCW, are going to be coming from. Who do you see on the horizon? Who do you see coming up as the next big star in the world?
The next big star, boy, that's an interesting question because there's so many guys coming out of the woodwork, and then they got guys coming in that I've never even heard of before. I got some guy that's a Mexican champion called Conan. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him.
We're going to be talking about that a little later.
Yeah, I never heard of him, but it's, I don't know. It's going to be interesting because, what you're going to have is you're going to have guys like Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko and some of the younger Japanese guys. And you're going to have guys like Conan from Mexico. And there's going to be another guy from Sweden or another ex-Olympic champion or another guy like Pittman who wrestled for 15 years in the Marines. I mean, they're going to be coming out of the woodwork and it's going to be like the gladiators. They're all going to be trying to become the next best guy. So I really couldn't tell you because there's so many of them. And like I said, a lot of them I didn't see it. WCW, is just getting so hot now that they're bringing these guys in from everywhere. So I'm getting excited about it because, I can sit back, golf a lot, and watch these guys kill each other like I did in my days to become one of the best.
Larry, you mentioned golf. I noticed you talked about that on the show a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I just wanted to slap the TBS in the face to let them know who the best was.
That's right. Larry, let's talk a little bit about your commentating. It's very enjoyable. I think you have a good sense of humor, and you really were able to bring your wrestling expertise into it, but do it in a very interesting and humorous way. How did you get started in terms of doing commentary after you retired from wrestling? And how is it working on that morning show with Chris Cruz and Dusty Rhodes?
Yeah, well, I didn't plan on getting into the broadcast. It never entered my mind. I was wrestling here for Turner, and I was under contract. They were paying me, gobs of money. And one of my cartilages in my right knee went, so I had to take about 4 or 5 months off to get the thing scoped out. And during that time, I don't know what happened, but they asked me to sit in and would I do some commentating. And I felt so bad about making all this money for sitting home that I said, yeah, I'll do some commentating for you. And then after I did a couple of shows, they came back and said, you're the best commentator we've ever heard. And they gave me another bigger contract to do that. So in the meantime, guys were coming in and out, and I think Flair went to New York. When I came in here, he took off and ran. But then these guys started coming back. Then it gets to the point where none of these guys were getting in the ring with me. So I said, well, hey, I mean, it's not worth my time wrestling Johnny B. Bad or Alex Wright. I mean, I need to think these kids to impress anybody. So I just do the broadcasting. I love the business. It's fun for me. So we'll see what happens. But that's how that came about. Mm-hmm. But now doing it with Dusty and Cruz, Gordon Soley was a pro. Cruz is like a neophyte at this thing, but his heart's in the right place. He loves wrestling. He tries to do the best job he can, and I think over the year he's done it. He's gotten a heck of a lot better, and he'll just continue to get better because he loves what he's doing. And Dusty Rhodes, I mean, he's like he's kind of a likable guy. You can't help but like the guy, but I can't understand half the things he says and goes on about it.
Hey, Larry, watch what you say because you know that Dusty's a legend here in Florida.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's been around. He's paid his dues, and I look back and say he's one of the guys that went through my era. Well, he's kind of ahead of me, but like I said, you can't help but like the guy, but he just gets on my nerves sometimes because he's kind of. Him and Hacksaw Duggan would have a heck of a conversation.
Larry, you've dropped a couple of hints about the possibility of getting back into the ring. Is that something we can look to see perhaps in 1996?
Well, like I said, I never really voluntarily left the ring. It just got to the point where, if I don't wrestle the so-called stars or go for a championship, it's just not worth my time. And I would like to. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. I could beat Ric Flair, and I would love to go in front of the world now with the way these telecommunications is and prove myself. It's probably an egomaniac thing where I want people to know, hey, Zbyszko is doing this broadcasting, but he's the best professional wrestler in the world because I am. But guys like Hogan and Savage know that too, and they know if they get in the ring with me that I'll put them over my knee and spank them. So
no doubt.
You can't blame them for not wanting to do it either. Otherwise, they won't be able to make any more bad movies.
That's right. No doubt about it. Okay, and we want to remind everybody that, again, it's WCW Monday Nitro at the James L. Knight Center next Monday night, January 15th at 7:30. The lineup that's been set right now is Ric Flair versus Sting, Lex Luger versus the Macho Man Randy Savage, Johnny B. Bad versus the Giant, and you have a tag team match from the Dungeon of Doom, Taskmaster and Hugh Morris.
There you go. Kevin Sullivan
there you go.
Is one of the most deranged. He's the perfect guy to put on a live show.
He's very near and dear to our hearts here on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling
Well, guys, he is a classic.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Larry, we want to thank you so much for joining us here this week, and how about taking us into our commercial break?
Well, you've been listening to the living legend, the greatest professional wrestler of the world, here on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap, Waxy 790. God, I'm good.
Yes, may I say that this is Bruno Sammartino, and you are listening to the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap on Waxy 790.
Thank you, Bruno Sammartino, former guest on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap. And we are back once again with the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap.
Hi, this is the Junkyard Dog, and you're listening to me on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap on Waxy 790.
This is Steve Sloan along with Craig K. and Mark Howard, and you're listening to the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap. And Craig, we have a special guest on the line.
Yeah, we do have a special guest. Unfortunately, Ken Patera, who was supposed to be with us, had to cancel out his appearance for a later date. But our guest this week is one of the most popular performers, I'd say from the 70s right up to today, right up into the middle 90s. His high-flying style has made him one of the biggest stars with the World Wrestling Federation, and he's spending his time these days working in Mexico and the United States very heavily on the independent circuit. Why don't we welcome to the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap, El Matador, Tito Santana.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Yes, Tito, it's great to have you on Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap, considering all the big stars we've had in the past, and I think you fit right up there with them. You're a graduate of West Texas State University, a very famous wrestling university, and I think He was also a very well-known quarterback on your team at that time.
Yeah, Tully Blanchard was a quarterback when I played at West Texas State, and he also went on to become a professional wrestler that is well known.
Tito, you started out as a professional football player working with the Kansas City Chiefs, then you moved to the British Columbia Lions of the Canadian League. What is it that lured you into professional wrestling?
Well, after I went to the BC Lions, I was just going to do it in the off season, and I started in Florida, as a matter of fact, right there with Eddie Graham, and in the late '70s, and they had some fantastic wrestlers, the Briscoes, Mike Graham. You had the champion was Terry Funk, and it was just exciting. The popularity. We used to go to Miami, to West Palm, all over Florida, and they talk about the hotbed of professional wrestling. I haven't seen any hotter beds than I did in Florida when I started in the late '70s.
Tito, it's kind of hard for us to believe that you were trained by both the Funks and Hiro Matsuda.
Yes, exactly right.
Because it seems like, Terry and Dory, Dory are more of a scientific style, but Terry is such a brawler, and you're, like a high flyer.
Yeah, I took a few of the things from Terry, and not too much. It's pretty hard to predict what Terry's going to do, but he does have a good mind, and one of the things that Terry does know, he can almost second guess his opponent and know what his opponent is his next move is gonna be, and I think that's one of the most things that I picked up from Terry.
Tito, this is Mark. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much.
We're talking about some of the guys of the past. What do you think of the current crop of wrestlers, the guys that you see in WCW, WWF now? Do you think they have the same work ethic that was around in the 70s and early 80s when it was territories, when it was more regional?
Well, I think there's a lot missing, and that's, I heard your program, the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Rep a few minutes ago when you were talking about the difference in the World Wrestling Federation and the WCW. And, the WWF is trying to put young guys, that have good bodies and have no wrestling skills, It's become a television sport, but you still got to be able to wrestle. And, that's where the WCW has the edge.
Right.
Currently, I'm involved with a new league, the American Wrestling Federation, and it's an up-and-coming league. We hope to be on the air early '96, and that's what we're going to try to bring back. We're going to try to bring back good old wrestling, and I think it's what's lacking in the sport. People want to watch a movie. They'll watch a good movie on television. Wrestling shouldn't be too much Hollywood. You got to have some kind of entertainment with the wrestling, but you also got to give the people wrestling.
Some good product.
Right.
This is Steve, and once again, I want to welcome you to the show. And stepping into the studio just a moment ago is also a name you might recognize, a face we certainly all here recognize. Do you have anything?
And a good friend of Tito's.
Every dog needs a bone to chew on.
Hey, Tito, you can say hi to JYD.
Hey, JYD.
What's up, my man?
How you doing, brother?
The Lord been blessing me real good, man. I can't complain. I'm down where it's nice and warm at. Trying to get ready to start teaching some school.
It's been a long time, man.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but I know things will have to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Tito. By the way, JYD, anytime you want to, throw a few comments in, you're more than welcome. Tito, I think you were the first wrestler to participate on all of the first 10 WrestleManias.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
Well, JYD was there on the WrestleMania 1. It was an experience like nobody has ever experienced before. And, it was the show of the century. And, every WrestleMania just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, probably until about the 5th. And I believe that after about the 5th or 6th WrestleMania, you started to see the decline in the World Wrestling Federation. The talent started deteriorating, and I guess the way I think one of the biggest problems why that happened was the way that the owner of the World Wrestling Federation started treating the wrestlers. When he first broke out and made it real big, he was a real pleasant guy to be around, and then I guess
right.
the pressures of running such a big operation, he just didn't lend himself and just didn't treat the wrestlers the way he did at first, you know. And
yeah, JYD.
Another thing I like to commend Tito on what he was saying. That's everything he was saying is true, but then again, it was surroundings around him. A lot of times when we first got that Tito, and you was there before I was because I was in the Mid South area. So once I arrived in the WWF, a lot of times Mr. McMahon was a one-on-one situation. He came and sit and talk with the guys. You know, everybody had it was a pleasant surrounding.
right.
Then when you start bringing a lot of guys in that were helping, which I would call no name, around him, then it was just like trying to get to the president. Then you never got direct word from Vince himself. It was people underneath Vince, and I know a lot of times that the word that was passed on that they said Vince sat down wasn't wasn't his choice. It was people that were surrounding. That's when you start seeing the difference in the talent and the different performance of the guys in the ring.
You know, JYD, the phone lines are going crazy here, so I want to get to some of these callers. How about we start with Alan in Fort Lauderdale? Alan,
Hi, Tito, Santana.
Hello, how are you?
How you doing?
Good.
I was just going to comment. I got a tape of your promotion that you work for, the American Wrestling Federation. And I think it's really a neat promotion. I saw it with the round system and stuff.
Yes.
And I think that's going to have a future, you know, in wrestling.
Well, you know, there's no doubt in my mind. We got to be in about 40% of the country, and the feedback that we got was fantastic everywhere we were at. As a matter of fact, we were in Chicago in a real sorry station, and we were doing as good as the WWF was doing there. But we need 70% to get the national advertisers. So we have hired a new syndicator, and they feel very, very sure that by early '96,
you'll be ready to roll.
Yeah, you know, and I haven't been able to get a hold of JYD, but JYD is a name that I think a lot of the fans would like to see in the American Wrestling Federation.
Well, you know, I went through several things, Tito. You know, I had a major divorce, and I just want to get my mind and my body and my soul all straightened out. So, you know, I did a little travel. I was out in California for a while. I taught school. And I went through Las Vegas, and I wrestled out in that area. You know, we was at that, with wrestling like that, which you was a champion out there at the time. You had to decline because you went to another federation, which you know what I'm talking about. And the daggum thing was doing real well. So then I decided I had a friend here, which is Death Row, that's here in Miami, and I decided to come down on this end because I want to get closer back to my hometown, which I figured that they got a good school system. It's a good area for wrestling around here. I want to get myself such a location, so I ran to Howard Broden, a couple of guys the other night. It was just a big coincidence, man. I went to end up in Gainesville, Florida, and I ran to one of the guys here, and Howard Broden, and one thing turned to another, and all of a sudden here's my good friend Tito Santana. So like Sunday wasn't a bad day after all. I was the only thing getting beat by the Dallas Cowboys. I'm a San Francisco fan today. I'm winning.
You're having a good time.
There you go.
How about we go to Timothy? Timothy, you're on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap.
Yeah, how you doing? I like your guys' show.
All right, Tim, go ahead.
Well, what I wanted to know is, I'm very upset on Sandman losing his title, but I wanted to know how come, like, WWF and WCW champions, they only defend their titles only on pay-per-views, and ECW, they only defend their titles, like, once a week or even more than that. They should defend their belts more than that, I think, WWF and WCW.
Well, you just answered your own question.
Pay-per-view.
As Larry King would say, next caller, please.
All right, thanks a lot.
Timothy, thanks for calling. Okay, how about we try Daniel in Hollywood? Daniel, you're on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap. And Daniel, please turn down your radio, Daniel.
Oh, all right.
Hey, Steve, you sound good the second time.
Okay?
Go ahead.
Hey, Tito.
Yeah.
Hey, that wrestling will be doing?
Yeah.
We will be standing here, you know, or...
What was the question?
The wrestling will be standing with?
I think he's referring to the AWF, Tito.
Uh-huh.
Is he talking?
Yeah, we will be starting to wrestle down in Florida.
I think we should be on the air. We're hoping to be on the air. They're telling us March the 1st.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, we are going to be centralized and working out of Tampa, Florida. You know, we feel that there's a lot of great wrestlers there.
Great wrestlers.
Yeah. So you know, we're gonna. I think that's what we're going to be based out of.
And the fact that you're coming down to Florida means that you think that Florida is still a hotbed for wrestling.
Oh, without a doubt. You know, Florida fans are just too smart. You know, they're not going to put up with the bullshit that the WWF has to offer. And you know, even the WCW, I don't think has what the wrestling fans are used to there in Florida. The wrestling fans in Florida want some good wrestling.
Tito, we're going to take a short time out. We would like to ask you to hang with us for a couple of minutes while we take this short break, and we'll be right back right after these messages.
Yes, may I say that this is Bruno Sammartino, and you are listening to the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Rep on Waxy 790.
We're back here on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Rep. Steve Sloan, Craig K., Mark Howard, JYD, Junkyard Dog, and on the line with us from New Jersey is Tito Santana. Tito, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Tito, you had arthroscopic surgery performed on your knee. At that time, it was something that people were not familiar with. They didn't know exactly what that type of surgery was. How did that affect your wrestling style once you came back to the ring?
Well, I think it was in about '86 when, at the hands of Greg the Hammer Valentine, I tore some cartilage on my knee from a figure four. It was great, you know. I wrestled 2 weeks after the operation. You know, I asked the doctor. I was a little nervous, and he said, "Tito, all you need to do is go through a little bit of physical therapy. The problem has been fixed. You don't have any problem." And you know, once I went back in the ring, you know, I went through the physical therapy, and it was completely healed. I forget there was a football player, a receiver that was out for 2 weeks also, and was able to come back. You know, and that's why I kind of felt real confident back then. It was a brand new thing, and you know, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me.
You seem like you lost a step to me in there.
No, I didn't. I don't think I did.
Tito, you were the Intercontinental title champion from the WWF a couple of times. You defeated Don Morocco, and then you also defeated Valentine, but you had some, you really feuded quite a long time with Randy Savage. Talk about Randy Savage, the kind of athlete he was in the ring, and a little bit about your feud with him.
Well, Randy Savage and myself, we had similar styles, and you know, it was you know, they had a lot of big names back then, but wherever Randy Savage and I were headlining, we were selling out as well as Hulk Hogan and you know, the names like Roddy Piper, because the people knew that when Randy Savage and I stepped into the ring, they were going to see you know, a couple of bulls going after each other. You know, I can't take anything away from Savage. You know, he's one of the best wrestlers ever to be around.
Gives the fans his money's worth, that's
Yeah,
for
he
sure.
sure does.
Let's try Steve from Hollywood. Steve, you're on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Rap, and please turn down your radio.
Hey.
So please turn down your radio, Steve.
You're going to stop taking these calls from the home.
Hey.
Go ahead, Steve.
Why was Tito saying the very best wrestling in Hollywood?
Wrestling in Hollywood? Well, I think about the only wrestling that you might see from Tito in Hollywood will be when the American Wrestling Federation comes on TV down here in March. That might be about it. Tito, you were down here last summer. You wrestled at the Rumble in the Jungle down in Metro Zoo, and once again defeated Greg the Hammer Valentine. I think that was the last time that we saw you down here.
Yeah, and we had a great turnout out there. You know, it was Miami has some great fans, and I really enjoyed coming down there. I wish I was over there. I live in New Jersey now, and I woke up and there was a couple inches of snow outside.
Well, it's about 85 here today.
I keep my eye on for you. I'll put some warm stuff in a bag and send that to you, Tito.
Tito, what about your days with the World Wrestling Federation when you held the tag team title with Ivan Putski? Because, I mean, I remember being there at Madison Square Garden and seeing the title change hands.
That was in 1980, and to me that was the start of a great career for me. Ivan Putski was a great veteran, and you know, he kind of took me under his wing. He liked, I guess, the fire that I had coming out of me, and you know, he was doing fine as a singles, and he just asked me if I wanted to team up and see where we went. And, he wanted to help me, and I agreed, and we went on to win the title. And after we lost the title, I just knew that I needed more experience to stay in the World Wrestling Federation to continue to do good. So I left for a while. I was gone for about 3 years and was able to get some great experience in the AWA out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then I went to Atlanta, Georgia, and wrestled for Ted Turner there. And I ended up, you know, then I came back to the World Wrestling Federation, and you know, I spent the last 12 years there.
Hey, Tito.
Huh?
You remember you said going back to 1980? You remember when we was together in Louisiana, in the Mid-South area?
Yeah.
And you saw debating whether to go to New York, go back to Georgia. We was riding on that long, lonesome highway that night. And I said, hey, man, you better go to the city where it's named twice, New York, New York.
That's right.
So I'm going to take off and go, man. Next thing I know, boom, you was in the stars, man. But I told you to save a piece of the actual old dog, and you did.
Yeah, you sure did.
Yeah, I remember that, man. Let's talk back on that thing. You was trying to debate where you go up there now. Next thing I know, there you were, man.
Yeah.
But, you know, you got what you deserve, man, because you was always, like I was listening to you talking about you and Randy Savage. And you guys you do have the same type of style. But God have blessed all of us, man. You know, we still alive.
Yeah, we sure are.
There you go.
Tito, I heard a rumor that you're going to be on the WCW pay-per-view, the big three-ring circus. Battle Royal, I mean.
I have, this is the first time I hear of that.
What do you think of that concept for a pay-per-view?
Well, I think it's, you know, they have to keep coming up with
new ideas.
You know, they have to keep outdoing it, you know, themselves and each other, you know, and you know, I do have to agree that you know, the WCW has won up on the WWF. You know, it's to me, the WCW is a lot more exciting to watch. You know, and
competition has actually made it more competitive. Would you say that made it better wrestling for the WCW?
Not only the competition. I'm gonna try to step in this a little bit. They mix up the ingredients. One time, like with the WWF, you had what I call all the top guys from different areas, and Vince blended it all together. You came out with a grade A product. Then you came with WCW. They were trying to take a bricklayer and turn him into a diamond cutter, and it would produce. So when it went to WCW, the guys from New York came down. They got rid of all the so-called wannabes, and they brought back a lot of the old guys and mixed the ingredients in together. And they're doing the same formula that Vince did. You mix the old with the new, and you come out with a good product. Right, T?
That's right.
Hey, Tito, thank you so much for joining us this week on the Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap, and we really appreciate you taking some time. And how about taking us into the break?
Well, thank you very much. You guys have been listening to Kendall Toyota Wrestling Wrap, Wexy 790. Arriba!
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Audio Wrestling Vault and will join us for our next edition of the program, titled The Wildest Women in Wrestling, featuring Luna Vachon, Wendy Richter, Heidi Lee Morgan, and others. If you have comments or questions regarding the Audio Wrestling Vault, you can reach us by email at audiowrestlingvault@gmail.com. Thanks again for joining us for the Audio Wrestling Vault.